Chapter 21. The Messiah. There was hunger among my people before I went away across the big water, because the Wasichus did not give us all the food they promised in the Black Hills Treaty. They made that treaty themselves. Our people did not want it and did not make it, yet the Wasichus who made it had given us less than half as much as they promised, so the people were hungry before I went away. But it was worse when I came back. My people looked pitiful. There was a big drought, and the rivers and creeks seemed to be dying. Nothing would grow that the people had planted, and the Wasichus had been sending less cattle and other food than ever before. The Wasichus had slaughtered all the bison and shut us up in pens. It looked as though we might all starve to death. We could not eat lies, and there was nothing we could do. And now the Wasichus had made another treaty to take away from us about half the land we had left. Our people did not want this treaty either, but 3 stars came and made the treaty just the same, because the Wasichus wanted our land between the smoky earth and the good river. So the flood of Wasichus, dirty with bad deeds, gnawed away half of the island that was left to us. When 3 stars came to kill us on the Rosebud, Crazy Horse whipped him and drove him back. But when he came this time without any soldiers, he whipped us and drove us back. We were penned up and could do nothing. All the time I was away from the home across the big water, my power was gone, and I was like a dead man moving around most of the time. I could hardly remember my vision, and when I did remember, it seemed like a dim dream. Just after I came back, some people asked me to cure a sick person, and I was afraid the power would not come back to me, but it did. So I went on helping the sick, and there were many, for the measles had come among the people who were already weak because of hunger. There were more sick people that winter when the whooping cough came and killed little children who did not have enough to eat. So it was. Our people were pitiful and in despair. But early that summer, when I came back from across the big water, 1889, strange news had come from the west, and the people had been talking and talking about it. They were talking about it when I came home, and that was the first I had heard of it. This news came to the Ogallala's first of all, and I heard that it came to us from the Shoshones and Blue Clouds, Arapahos. Some believed it and some did not believe. It was hard to believe, and when I first heard it, I thought it was only foolish talk that somebody had started somewhere. This news said that out yonder in the west, at a place near where the great mountains, the Sierras, stand before you come to the big water, there was a sacred man among Paiutes who had talked to the Great Spirit in a vision, and the Great Spirit had told him how to save the Indian peoples and make the Wasichus disappear and bring back all the bison and the people who are dead, and how there would be a new earth. Before I came back, the people had got together to talk about this, and they had sent 3 men, Good Thunder, Brave Bear, and Yellow Breast, to see this sacred man with their own eyes and learn if the story about him was true. So these 3 men had made the long journey west, and in the fall after I came home, they returned to the Ogallalas with wonderful things to tell. There was a big meeting at the head of White Clay Creek, not far from Pine Ridge, when they came back, but I did not go over there to hear, because I did not yet believe. I thought maybe it was only the despair that made people believe, just as a man who is starving may dream of plenty of everything good to eat. I did not go over to the meeting, but I heard all they had to tell. These 3 men all said the same thing, and they were good men. They said that they traveled far until they came to a great flat valley, near the last great mountains before the big water, and there they saw the Wanikia, who was the son of the Great Spirit, and they talked to him. Wasichus called him Jack Wilson, but his name was Wovoka. He told them that there was another world coming, just like a cloud. It would come in a whirlwind out of the west and would crush out everything on this world, which was old and dying. In that other world there was plenty of meat, just like old times, and in that world all the dead Indians were alive, and all the bison that had ever been killed were roaming around again. This sacred man gave some sacred red paint and 2 eagle feathers to Good Thunder. The people must put this paint on their faces, and they must dance a ghost dance that the sacred man taught to Good Thunder, Yellow Breast, and Brave Bear. If they did this, they could get on this other world when it came, and the Wasichus would not be able to get on, and so they would disappear. When he gave the 2 eagle feathers to Good Thunder, the sacred man said, "Receive these eagle feathers and behold them, for my father will cause these to bring your people back to him." This was all that was heard the whole winter. When I heard this about the red paint and the eagle feathers and about bringing the people back to the Great Spirit, it made me think hard. I had had a great vision that was to bring the people back into the nation's hoop, and maybe this sacred man had had the same vision and it was going to come true, so that the people would get back on the red road. Maybe I was not meant to do this myself, but if I helped with the power that was given to me, the tree might bloom again and the people prosper. This was in my mind all that winter, but I did not know what vision the sacred man out there had seen, and I wished I could talk to him and find out. This was sitting deeper in my mind every day, and it was a very bad winter, with much hunger and sickness. My father died in the first part of the winter from the bad sickness that many people had. This made me very sad. Everything good seemed to be going away. My younger brother and sister had died before I came home, and now I was fatherless in this world, but I still had my mother. I was working in a store for the Wasichus so that I could get something for her to eat, and I just kept on working there and thinking about what Good Thunder, Yellow Breast, and Brave Bear had told, but I did not feel sure yet. During that winter, the people wanted to hear some more about this sacred man and the new world coming, so they sent more men out there to learn what they could. Good Thunder and Yellow Breast, with 2 others, went from Pine Ridge. Some went with them from other agencies, and 2 of these were Kicking Bear and Short Bull. News came back from these men as they traveled west, and it seemed that everywhere people believed all that we had heard, and more. Letters came back telling us this. I kept on working in the store and helping sick people with my power. Then it was spring in 1890, and I heard that these men had all come back from the west and that they said it was all true. I did not go to this meeting either, but I heard the gossip that was everywhere now, and people said it was really the son of the Great Spirit who was out there, that when he came to the Wasichus a long time ago, they had killed him, but he was coming to the Indians this time, and there would not be any Wasichus in the New World that would come like a cloud in a whirlwind and crush out the old earth that was dying. This, they said, would happen after one more winter, when the grasses were appearing, in 1891. I heard many wonderful things about the Wanikia that these men had seen and heard, and they were good men. He could make animals talk, and once while they were with him he made a spirit vision, and they all saw it. They saw a big water, and beyond it was a beautiful green land where all the Indians that had ever lived in the bison and the other animals were all coming home together. Then the Wanikia, they said, made the vision go out, because it was not yet time for this to happen. After another winter it would happen, when the grasses were appearing. And once, they said, the Wanikia held out his hat for them to look into, and when they did this, all but one saw there the whole world and all that was wonderful. But that one could see only the inside of the hat, they said. Good Thunder himself told me that, with the power of the Wanikia, he had gone to a bison skin teepee, and there his son, who had been dead a long time, was living with his wife, and they had a long talk together. This was not like my great vision, and I just went on working in the store. I was puzzled and did not know what to think. After a while, I heard the north of Pine Ridge at the head of Cheyenne Creek, Kicking Bear had held the first ghost dance, and that people who danced had seen their dead relatives and talked to them. The next thing I heard was that they were dancing on Wounded Knee Creek just below Manderson. I did not believe yet, but I wanted to find out things, because all this was sitting more and more strongly in my heart since my father died. Something seemed to tell me to go and see. For a while I kept from going, but at last I could not any more, so I got on my horse and went to this ghost dance on Wounded Knee Creek below Manderson. I was surprised and could hardly believe what I saw, because so much of my vision seemed to be in it. The dancers, both women and men, were holding hands in a big circle, and in the center of the circle they had a tree painted red with most of its branches cut off and some dead leaves on it. This was exactly like the part of my vision where the holy tree was dying, and the circle of the men and women holding hands was like the sacred hoop that should have power to make the tree to bloom again. I saw, too, that the sacred articles the people had offered were scarlet, as in my vision, and all their faces were painted red. Also, they used the pipe and the eagle feathers. I sat there looking on and feeling sad. It all seemed to be from my great vision somehow, and I had done nothing yet to make the tree to bloom. Then all at once, great happiness overcame me, and it all took hold of me right there. This was to remind me to get to work at once and help to bring my people back into the sacred hoop, that they might walk again the red road in a sacred manner, pleasing to the powers of the universe that are one power. I remembered how the spirits had taken me to the center of the earth and shown me the good things, and how my people should prosper. I remembered how the 6 grandfathers had told me that through their power I should make my people live and the holy tree should bloom. I believed my vision was coming true at last, and happiness overcame me. When I went to the dance, I went only to see and to learn what the people believed. But now I was going to stay and use the power that had been given me. The dance was over for that day, but they would dance again next day, and I would dance with them. Chapter 22. Visions of the Other World. So I dressed myself in a sacred manner, and before the dance began next morning I went among the people who were standing around the withered tree. Good Thunder, who was a relative of my father and later married my mother, put his arms around me and took me to the sacred tree that had not bloomed, and there he offered up a prayer for me. He said, "Father, Great Spirit, behold this boy, your ways he shall see." Then he began to cry. I thought of my father and my brother and sister who had left us, and I could not keep the tears from running out of my eyes. I raised my face up to keep them back, but they came out just the same. I cried with my whole heart, and while I cried I thought of my people in despair. I thought of my vision, and how it was promised me that my people should have a place in this earth where they could be happy every day. I thought of them on the wrong road now, but maybe they could be brought back into the hoop again and to the good road. Under the tree that never bloomed I stood and cried because it had withered away. With tears on my face I asked the Great Spirit to give it life and leaves and singing birds, as in my vision. Then there came a strong shivering all over my body, and I knew that the power was in me. Good Thunder now took one of my arms, Kicking Bear the other, and we began to dance. The song we sang was like this: "Who do you think he is that comes? It is one who seeks his mother." It was what the dead would sing when entering the other world and looking for their relatives who had gone there before them. As I danced, with Good Thunder and Kicking Bear holding my arms between them, I had the queer feeling that I knew and I seemed to be lifted clear off the ground. I did not have a vision all that first day. That night I thought about the other world, and that the Wanikia himself was with my people there, and maybe the holy tree of my vision was really blooming yonder right then, and that it was there my vision had already come true. From the center of the earth I had been shown all good and beautiful things in a great circle of peace, and maybe this land of my vision was where all my people were going, and there they would live and prosper where no Wasichus were or could ever be. Before we started dancing that day, Kicking Bear offered a prayer, saying, "Father, Great Spirit, behold these people. They shall go forth today to see their relatives, and yonder they shall be happy, day after day, and their happiness will not end." Then we began dancing, and most of the people wailed and cried as they danced, holding hands in a circle, but some of them laughed with happiness. Now and then someone would fall down like dead, and others would go staggering around and panting before they would fall. While they were lying there like dead, they were having visions, and we kept on dancing and singing, and many were crying for the old way of living, and that the old religion might be with them again. After a while, I began to feel very queer. First, my legs seemed to be full of ants. I was dancing with my eyes closed, as the others did. Suddenly it seemed that I was swinging off the ground and not touching it any longer. The queer feeling came up from my legs and was in my heart now. It seemed I would glide forward like a swing, and then glide back again in longer and longer swoops. There was no fear with this, just a growing happiness. I must have fallen down, but I felt as though I had fallen off a swing when it was going forward, and I was floating headfirst through the air. My arms were stretched out, and all I saw at first was a single eagle feather right in front of me. Then the feather was a spotted eagle dancing on ahead of me with his wings fluttering. and he was making the shrill whistle that is his. My body did not move at all, but I looked ahead and floated fast toward where I looked. There was a ridge right in front of me, and I thought I was going to run into it, but I went right over it. On the other side of the ridge, I could see a beautiful land where many, many people were camping in a great circle. I could see that they were happy and had plenty. Everywhere there were drying racks full of meat. The air was clear and beautiful with a living light that was everywhere. All around the circle, feeding on the green, green grass, were fat and happy horses, and animals of all kinds were scattered all over the green hills, and singing hunters were returning with their meat. I floated over the teepees and began to come down feet first at the center of the hoop where I could see a beautiful tree all green and full of flowers. When I touched the ground, 2 men were coming toward me, and they wore holy shirts made and painted in a certain way. They came to me and said, "It is not yet time to see your father, who is happy. You have work to do. We will give you something that you shall carry back to your people, and with it they shall come to see their loved ones." I knew it was the way their holy shirts were made that they wanted me to take back. They told me to return at once, and then I was out in the air again, floating fast as before. When I came right over the dancing place, the people were still dancing, but it seemed they were not making any sound. I had hoped to see the withered tree in bloom, but it was dead. Then I fell back into my body, and as I did this, I heard voices all around and above me, and I was sitting on the ground. Many were crowding around, asking me what vision I had seen. I told them just what I had seen, and what I brought back was the memory of the holy shirts the 2 men wore. That evening, some of us got together at Big Road's teepee and decided to use the ghost shirts I had seen. So the next day I made ghost shirts all day long and painted them in the sacred manner of my vision. As I made these shirts, I thought how in my vision everything was like old times, and the tree was flowering. But when I came back, the tree was dead, and I thought that if this world would do as the vision teaches, the tree could bloom here too. I made the first shirt for Afraid of Hawk and the second for the son of Big Road. In the evening I made a sacred stick like that I had seen in my first vision and painted it red with the sacred paint of the Wanikia. On the top of it I tied 1 eagle feather, and this I carried in the dance after that, wearing the holy shirt as I had seen it. Because of my vision and the power they knew I had, I was asked to lead the dance next morning. We all stood in a straight line facing the west, and I prayed, "Father, Great Spirit, behold me. The nation that I have is in despair. The new earth you promised you have shown me. Let my nation also behold it." After the prayer, we stood with our right hands raised to the west, and we all began to weep, and right there, as they wept, some of them fainted before the dance began. As we were dancing, I had the same queer feeling I had before, as though my feet were off the earth and swinging. Kicking Bear and Good Thunder were holding my arms. After a while it seemed they let go of me, and once more I floated head first, face down, with arms extended, and the spotted eagle was dancing there ahead of me again, and I could hear his shrill whistle and his scream. I saw the ridge again, and as I neared it there was a deep rumbling sound, and out of it there leaped a flame. But I glided right over it. There were 6 villages ahead of me in the beautiful land that was all clear and green in living light. Over these in turn I glided, coming down on the south side of the 6th village, and as I touched the ground 12 men were coming towards me, and they said, "Our father, the 2-legged chief, you shall see." Then they led me to the center of the circle, where once more I saw the holy tree all full of leaves and blooming. But that was not all I saw. Against the tree there was a man standing with arms held wide in front of him. I looked hard at him, and I could not tell what people he came from. He was not a Wasichu, and he was not an Indian. His hair was long and hanging loose, and on the left side of his head he wore an eagle feather. His body was strong and good to see, and it was painted red. I tried to recognize him, but I could not make him out. He was a very fine-looking man. While I was staring hard at him, his body began to change and became very beautiful with all colors of light, and around him there was light. He spoke like singing. My life is such that all earthly beings and growing things belong to me. Your Father, the Great Spirit, has said this. You too must say this." Then he went out like a light in the wind. The 12 men who were there spoke. "Behold them, your nation's life shall be such." I saw again how beautiful the day was, the sky all blue and full of yellow light above the greening earth. And I saw that all the people were beautiful and young. There were no old ones there, nor children either, just people of about one age, and beautiful. Then there were 12 women who stood in front of me and spoke. Behold them, their way of life you shall take back to earth. When they had spoken, I heard singing in the west, and I learned the song I heard. Then one of the 12 men took 2 sticks, one painted white and one red, and, thrusting them in the ground, he said, "Take these, you shall depend upon them. Make haste." I started to walk, and it seemed as though a strong wind went under me and picked me up. I was in the air, with outstretched arms and floating fast. There was a fearful dark river that I had to go over, and I was afraid. It rushed and roared and was full of angry foam. Then I looked down and saw many men and women who were trying to cross the dark and fearful river, but they could not. Weeping, they looked up to me and cried, "Help us!" But I could not stop gliding, for it was as though a great wind were under me. Then I saw my earthly people again at the dancing place, and fell back into my body lying there. And I was sitting up, and people were crowding around me to ask what vision I had seen. I told my vision through songs, and the older men explained them to the others. I sang a song, the words of which were those the Wanikia spoke under the flowering tree, and the air of it was that which I heard in the west after the 12 women had spoken. I sang it 4 times, and the 4th time all the people began to weep together because the Wasichus had taken the beautiful world away from us. I thought and thought about this vision. The 6 villages seemed to represent the 6 grandfathers that I had seen long ago in the flaming rainbow teepee, and I had gone to the 6th village, which was for the 6th grandfather, the spirit of the earth, because I was to stand for him in the world. I wondered if the Wanikia might be the red man of my great vision, who turned into a bison and then into the 4-rayed herb, the daybreak star herb of understanding. I thought the 12 men and 12 women were for the moons of the year. Chapter 23. Bad Trouble Coming. While these things were happening, the summer of 1890 was getting old. I did not then know all that was going on at other places, but some things I heard, and much more I heard later. When Good Thunder and Kicking Bear came back in the spring from seeing the Wanikia, the Wasichus at Pine Ridge put them in prison a while, and then let them go. This showed the Wasichus were afraid of something. In the moon of black cherries, August, many people were dancing at No Water's camp on Clay Creek, and the agent came and told them to stop dancing. They would not stop, and they said they would fight for their religion if they had to do it. The agent went away, and they kept on dancing. They called him Young Man Afraid of Lakotas. Later, I heard that the Brules were dancing over east of us, and then I heard that Bigfoot's people were dancing on the Good River Reservation, also that Kicking Bear had gone to Sitting Bull's camp on Grand River, and that the people were dancing there too. Word came to us that the Indians were beginning to dance everywhere. The people were hungry and in despair, and many believed in the good new world that was coming. The Wasichus gave us less than half the beef cattle they promised us in the treaty. And these cattle were very poor. For a while our people would not take the cattle, because there were so few of them and they were so poor. But after a while they had to take them or starve to death. So we got more lies than cattle, and we could not eat lies. When the agent told the people to quit dancing, their hearts were bad. From the dancing on Wounded Knee I went over to the Brules, who were camping on Cut Meat Creek at this time, and I took with me 6 shirts like those I had seen the 12 men wearing in my vision, and 6 dresses like the 12 women wore. I gave these to the Brules, and they made others for themselves. We danced there, and another vision came to me. I saw a flaming rainbow, like the one I had seen in my first great vision. Below the rainbow was a teepee made of cloud. Over me there was a spotted eagle soaring, and he said to me, "Remember this." That was all I saw and heard. I have thought much about this since, and I have thought that this was where I made my great mistake. I had had a very great vision, and I should have depended only upon that to guide me to the good, but I followed the lesser visions that had come to me while dancing on Wounded Knee Creek. The vision of the flaming rainbow was to warn me, maybe, and I did not understand. I did not depend upon the great vision as I should have done. I depended upon the 2 sticks that I had seen in the lesser vision. It is hard to follow one great vision in this world of darkness and of many changing shadows. Among those shadows, men get lost. When I came back from the Brules, the weather was getting cold. Many of the Brules came along when I came back, and joined the Ogalallas in the dancing on Wounded Knee. We heard that there were soldiers at Pine Ridge and that others were coming all the time. Then one morning we heard that the soldiers were marching toward us, so we broke camp and moved west to Grass Creek. From there we went to White Clay and camped a while and danced. There came to us Fire Thunder, Red Wound, and Young American Horse with a message from the soldiers that this matter of the ghost dance must be looked into, and that there should be rulings over it, and that they did not mean to take the dance away from us. But could we believe anything the Wasichus ever said to us? They spoke with forked tongues. We moved in closer to Pine Ridge and camped. Many soldiers were there now. And what were they there for? There was a big meeting with the agent, but I did not go to hear. He made a ruling that we could dance 3 days every moon, and the rest of the time we should go and make a living for ourselves somehow. He did not say how we could do that, but the people agreed to this. The next day, while I was sitting in a teepee with Good Thunder, a policeman came to us and said, "I was not sent here, but I came for your good to tell you what I have heard, that they are going to arrest you too." Good Thunder thought we ought to go to the Brules, who had a big camp on Wounded Knee below Manderson, so that evening we saddled and started. We came through Pepper Creek and White Horse Creek to Wounded Knee and followed it down to the Brule camp. They were glad to see us. In the morning the crier went around and called a meeting. I spoke to the Brules, and this is what I said. "My relatives, there is a certain thing that we have done. From that certain sacred thing we have had visions. In those visions we have seen, and also we have heard, that our relatives who have gone before us are in the other world that has been revealed to us, and that we too shall go there. They are right now with the Wanikia. If the Wasichus want to fight us, let them do it. Have in your minds a strong desire, and take courage. We must depend upon the departed ones who are in the new world that is coming." More Brules came there from Porcupine and Medicine Root Creeks, and we all broke camp, moving down the Wounded Knee to Smoky Earth River, the White. There a black robe Catholic priest came and tried to coax us to return. Our people told him that Wasichu promises were no good, that everything they had promised was a lie. Only a few Ogalallas turned back with the black robe. He was a good man, and he was badly wounded that winter in the butchering of Bigfoot's band. He was a very good man, and not like the other Wasichus. From Smoky Earth River we moved to High Pocket's place southwest of the top of the Badlands. While we were there, American Horse and Fast Thunder came to us. They were both chiefs, and they came to bring us in to Pine Ridge. We had to obey. The Brules would not obey and tried to keep us from going. They struck us, and there was quite a struggle for a while, but we went anyway, because we had to go. Kicking Bear stayed with the Brules that time, but he came into Pine Ridge a little later. A very few of the Brules went along with us. We camped on White River, then on White Clay, then on Cheyenne Creek north of Pine Ridge. Most of the Ogalallas were camping near there too. It was about this time that bad news came to us from the north. We heard that some policemen from Standing Rock had gone to arrest Sitting Bull on Grand River, and that he would not let them take him, so there was a fight and they killed him. It was now near the end of the moon of popping trees, and I was 27 years old, December 1890. We heard that Bigfoot was coming down from the Badlands with nearly 400 people. Some of these were from Sitting Bull's band, and they had run away when Sitting Bull was killed, and joined Bigfoot on Good River. There were only about 100 warriors in this band. and all the others were women and children and some old men. They were all starving and freezing, and Bigfoot was so sick that they had to bring him along in a pony drag. They had all run away to hide in the Badlands, and they were coming in now because they were starving and freezing. When they crossed Smoky Earth River, they followed up Medicine Root Creek to its head. Soldiers were over there looking for them. The soldiers had everything and were not freezing and starving. Near Porcupine Butte, the soldiers came up to the Bigfoots, and they surrendered and went along with the soldiers to Wounded Knee Creek, where the Brennan store was. It was in the evening when we heard that the Bigfoots were camped over there with the soldiers, about 15 miles by the old road from where we were. It was the next morning, December 29th, 1890, that something terrible happened. Chapter 24. The Butchering at Wounded Knee. That evening before it happened, I went into Pine Ridge and heard these things, and while I was there, soldiers started for where the Bigfoots were. These made about 500 soldiers that were there next morning. When I saw them starting, I felt that something terrible was going to happen. That night I could hardly sleep at all. I walked around most of the night. In the morning I went out after my horses, and while I was out I heard shooting off toward the east, and I knew from the sound that it must be wagon guns, cannon going off. The sounds went right through my body, and I felt that something terrible would happen. When I reached camp with the horses, a man rode up to me and said, "Hey, hey, hey, the people that are coming are fired on, I know it." I saddled up my buckskin and put on my sacred shirt. It was one I had made to be worn by no one but myself. It had a spotted eagle outstretched on the back of it, and the daybreak star was on the left shoulder, because when facing south that shoulder is toward the east. Across the breast, from the left shoulder to the right hip, was the flaming rainbow, and there was another rainbow around the neck, like a necklace, with a star at the bottom. At each shoulder, elbow, and wrist was an eagle feather, and over the whole shirt were red streaks of lightning. You will see that this was from my great vision, and you will know how it protected me that day. I painted my face all red, and in my hair I put one eagle feather for the one above. It did not take me long to get ready, for I could still hear the shooting over there. I started out alone on the old road that ran across the hills to Wounded Knee. I had no gun. I carried only the sacred bow of the West that I had seen in my great vision. I had gone only a little way when a band of young men came galloping after me. The first two who came up wore Love's War and Iron Wasichu. I asked what they were going to do, and they said they were just going to see where the shooting was. Then others were coming up, and some older men. We rode fast, and there were about 20 of us now. The shooting was getting louder. A horseback from over there came galloping very fast toward us, and he said, "Hey, hey, hey, they have murdered him." Then he whipped his horse and rode away faster toward Pine Ridge. In a little while we had come to the top of the ridge where, looking to the east, you can see for the first time the monument and the burying ground on the little hill where the church is. That is where the terrible thing started. Just south of the burying ground on the little hill a deep, dry gulch runs about east and west, very crooked, and it rises westward to nearly the top of the ridge where we were. It had no name, but the Wasichu sometimes called it Battle Creek now. We stopped on the ridge not far from the head of the dry gulch. Wagon guns were still going off over there on the little hill, and they were going off again where they hit along the gulch. There was much shooting down yonder, and there were many cries, and we could see cavalrymen scattered over the hills ahead of us. Cavalrymen were riding along the gulch and shooting into it, where the women and children were running away and trying to hide in the gullies and the stunted pines. A little way ahead of us, just below the head of the dry gulch, there were some women and children who were huddled under a clay bank, and some cavalrymen were there pointing guns at them. We stopped back behind the ridge, and I said to the others, "Take courage, these are our relatives. We will try to get them back." Then we all sang a song which went like this: "A thunder-being nation I am, I have said. A thunder-being nation I am, I have said. You shall live, you shall live, you shall live, you shall live." Then I rode over the ridge and the others after me, and we were crying, "Take courage, it is time to fight." The soldiers who were guarding our relatives shot at us and then ran away fast, and some more cavalrymen on the other side of the gulch did too. We got our relatives and sent them across the bridge to the northwest where they would be safe. I had no gun, and when we were charging, I just held the sacred bow out in front of me with my right hand. The bullets did not hit us at all. We found a little baby lying all alone near the head of the gulch. I could not pick her up just then, but I got her later, and some of my people adopted her. I just wrapped her up tighter in a shawl that was around her and left her there. It was a safe place, and I had other work to do. The soldiers had run eastward over the hills where there were some more soldiers, and they were off their horses and lying down. I told the others to stay back, and I charged upon them holding the sacred bow out toward them with my right hand. They all shot at me, and I could hear bullets all around me, but I ran my horse right close to them, and then swung around. Some soldiers across the gulch began shooting at me too, but I got back to the others and was not hurt at all. By now, many other Lakotas who had heard the shooting were coming up from Pine Ridge, and we all charged on the soldiers. They ran eastward toward where the trouble began. We followed down along the dry gulch, and what we saw was terrible. Dead and wounded women and children and little babies were scattered all along there where they had been trying to run away. The soldiers had followed along the gulch as they ran and murdered them in there. Sometimes they were in heaps because they had huddled together, and some were scattered all along. Sometimes bunches of them had been killed and torn to pieces where the wagon guns hit them. I saw a little baby trying to suck its mother, but she was bloody and dead. There were 2 little boys at one place in this gulch. They had guns and they had been killing soldiers all by themselves. We could see the soldiers they had killed. The boys were all alone there, and they were not hurt. These were very brave little boys. When we drove the soldiers back, they dug themselves in, and we were not enough people to drive them out from there. In the evening they marched off up Wounded Knee Creek, and then we saw all that they had done there. Men and women and children were heaped and scattered all over the flat at the bottom of the little hill where the soldiers had their wagon guns, and westward up the dry gulch all the way to the high ridge. The dead women and children and babies were scattered. When I saw this, I wished that I had died too, but I was not sorry for the women and children. It was better for them to be happy in the other world, and I wanted to be there too. But before I went there, I wanted to have revenge. I thought there might be a day, and we should have revenge. After the soldiers marched away, I heard from my friend Dog Chief how the trouble started, and he was right there by Yellowbird when it happened. This is the way it was. In the morning, the soldiers began to take all the guns away from the Bigfoots, who were camped in the flat below the little hill where the monument and burying ground are now. The people had stacked most of their guns and even their knives by the teepee where Bigfoot was lying sick. Soldiers were on the little hill and all around. And there were soldiers across the dry gulch to the south and over east along Wounded Knee Creek too. The people were nearly surrounded, and the wagon guns were pointing at them. Some had not yet given up their guns, and so the soldiers were searching all the teepees, throwing things around and poking into everything. There was a man called Yellowbird, and he and another man were standing in front of the teepee where Bigfoot was lying sick. They had white sheets around and over them with eye holes to look through, and they had guns under these. An officer came to search them. He took the other man's gun, and then started to take Yellowbird's, but Yellowbird would not let go. He wrestled with the officer, and while they were wrestling, the gun went off and killed the officer. Wasichus and some others have said he meant to do this. But Dog Chief was standing right there, and he told me it was not so. As soon as the gun went off, Dog Chief told me an officer shot and killed Bigfoot who was lying sick inside the teepee. Then suddenly nobody knew what was happening, except that the soldiers were all shooting and the wagon guns began going off right in among the people. Many were shot down right there. The women and children ran into the gulch and up west, dropping all the time, for the soldiers shot them as they ran. There were only about 100 warriors, and there were nearly 500 soldiers. The warriors rushed to where they had piled their guns and knives. They fought soldiers with only their hands until they got their guns. Dog Chief saw Yellowbird run into a teepee with his gun, and from there he killed soldiers until the teepee caught fire. Then he died full of bullets. It was a good winter day when all this happened. The sun was shining, but after the soldiers marched away from their dirty work, a heavy snow began to fall. The wind came up in the night. There was a big blizzard, and it grew very cold. The snow drifted deep in the crooked gulch, and it was one long grave of butchered women and children and babies, who had never done any harm and were only trying to run away. Chapter 25. The End of the Dream. After the soldiers marched away, Red Crow and I started back toward Pine Ridge together, and I took the little baby that I told you about. Red Crow had one too. We were going back to Pine Ridge because we thought there was peace back home, but it was not so. While we were gone, there was a fight around the agency, and our people had all gone away. They had gone away so fast that they left all the teepees standing. It was nearly dark when we passed north of Pine Ridge, where the hospital is now, and some soldiers shot at us, but did not hit us. We rode into the camp, and it was all empty. We were very hungry because we had not eaten anything since early morning, so we peeped into the teepees until we saw there was a pot with papa, dried meat, cooked in it. We sat down in there and began to eat. While we were doing this, the soldiers shot at the teepee, and a bullet struck right between Red Crow and me. It threw dust in the soup, but we kept right on eating until we had our fill. Then we took the babies and got on our horses and rode away. If that bullet had only killed me, then I could have died with papa in my mouth. The people had fled down Clay Creek, and we followed their trail. It was dark now, and late in the night we came to where they were camped without any teepees. They were just sitting by little fires, and the snow was beginning to blow. We rode in among them, and I heard my mother's voice. She was singing a death song for me, because she felt sure I had died over there. She was so glad to see me that she cried and cried. Women who had milk fed the little babies that Red Crow and I brought with us. I think nobody but the little children slept any that night. The snow blew and we had no teepees. When it was getting light, a war party went out and I went along, but this time I took a gun with me. When I started out the day before to Wounded Knee, I took only my sacred bow, which was not made to shoot with, because I was little in doubt about the Wanikia religion at that time, and I did not really want to kill anybody because of it. But I did not feel like that anymore. After what I had seen over there, I wanted revenge. I wanted to kill. We crossed White Clay Creek and followed it up, keeping on the west side. Soon we could hear many guns going off, so we struck west, following a ridge to where the fight was. It was close to the mission, and there are many bullets in the mission yet. From this ridge we could see that the Lakotas were on both sides of the creek and were shooting at soldiers who were coming down the creek. As we looked down, we saw a little ravine, and across this was a big hill. We crossed and rode up the hillside. They were fighting right there, and a Lakota cried to me, "Black Elk, this is the kind of day in which to do something great." I answered, "How?" Then I got off my horse and rubbed earth on myself to show the powers that I was nothing without their help. Then I took my rifle, got on my horse, and galloped up to the top of the hill. Right below me the soldiers were shooting, and my people called out to me not to go down there, that there were some good shots among the soldiers and I should get killed for nothing. But I remembered my great vision, the part where the geese of the north appeared. I depended upon their power, stretching out my arms with my gun in the right hand, like a goose soaring when it flies low to turn in a change of weather. I made the sound the geese make, and doing this I charged. The soldiers saw and began shooting fast at me. I kept right on with my buckskin running, shot in their faces when I was near, then swung wide and rode back up the hill. All this time the bullets were buzzing around me and I was not touched. I was not even afraid. It was like being in a dream about shooting. But just as I had reached the very top of the hill, suddenly it was like waking up, and I was afraid. I dropped my arms and quit making the goose cry. Just as I did this, I felt something strike my belt as though someone had hit me there with the back of an axe. I nearly fell out of my saddle, but I managed to hold on and rode over the hill. An old man by the name of Protector was there, and he ran up and held me, for now I was falling off my horse. I will show you where the bullet struck me, sideways across the belly here, showing a long deep scar on the abdomen. My insides were coming out. Protector tore up a blanket in strips and bound it around me so that my insides would stay in. By now I was crazy to kill, and I said to Protector, "Help me on my horse, let me go over there. It is a good day to die, so I will go over there." But Protector said, "No, young nephew, you must not die today. That would be foolish. Your people need you. There may be a better day to die." He lifted me into my saddle and led my horse away downhill. Then I began to feel very sick. By now it looked as though the soldiers would be wiped out and the Lakotas were fighting harder, but I heard that, after I left, the Black Wasichu soldiers came and the Lakotas had to retreat. There were many of our children in the mission, and the sisters and priests were taking care of them. I heard there were sisters and priests right in the battle helping wounded people and praying. There was a man by the name of Little Soldier who took charge of me and brought me to where our people were camped. While we were over at the mission fight, they had fled the O'Onagazi and were camped on top of it where the women and children would be safe from soldiers. Old Hollowhorn was there. He was a very powerful bear medicine man, and he came over to heal my wound. In 3 days I could walk, but I kept a piece of blanket tied around my belly. It was now nearly the middle of the moon of frost in the teepee, January. We heard that soldiers were on Smoky Earth River and were coming to attack us in the O'Onagazi. They were near Blackfeather's palace, so a party of about 60 of us started on the warpath to find them. My mother tried to keep me at home because, although I could walk and ride a horse, my wound was not all healed yet, but I would not stay, for, after what I had seen at Wounded Knee, I wanted a chance to kill soldiers. We rode down Grass Creek to Smoky Earth and crossed, riding downstream. Soon from the top of a little hill we saw wagons and cavalry guarding them. The soldiers were making a corral of their wagons and getting ready to fight. We got off our horses and went behind some hills to a little knoll, where we crept up to look at the camp. Some soldiers were bringing harnessed horses down to a little creek to water, and I said to the others, "If you will stay here and shoot at the soldiers, I will charge over there and get some good horses." They knew of my power, so they did this, and I charged on my buckskin while the others kept shooting. I got 7 of the horses, but when I started back with these, all the soldiers saw me and began shooting. They killed 2 of my horses, but I brought back 5 safe and was not hit. When I was out of range, I caught up a fine bald-faced bay and turned my buckskin loose. Then I drove the others back to our party. By now more cavalry were coming up the river, a big bunch of them, and there was some hard fighting for a while, because there were not enough of us. We were fighting and retreating, and all at once I saw Red Willow on foot fighting. He called to me, "Cousin, my horse is killed." So I caught up a soldier's horse that was dragging a rope and brought it to Red Willow while the soldiers were shooting fast at me. Just then, for a little while, I was a Wanikia myself. In this fight, Long Bear and another man, whose name I have forgotten, were badly wounded, but we saved them and carried them along with us. The soldiers did not follow us far into the Badlands, and when it was night we rode back with our wounded to the O'Onagazi. We wanted a much bigger war party so that we could meet the soldiers and get revenge, but this was hard because the people were not all of the same mind, and they were hungry and cold. We had a meeting there, and were all ready to go out with more warriors, when, afraid of his horses, came over from Pine Ridge to make peace with Red Cloud, who was with us there. Our party wanted to go out and fight anyway, but Red Cloud made a speech to us, something like this: "Brothers, this is a very hard winter. The women and children are starving and freezing. If this were summer, I would say to keep on fighting to the end, but we cannot do this. We must think of the women and children, and that it is very bad for them. So we must make peace, and I will see that nobody is hurt by the soldiers." The people agreed to this, for it was true. So we broke camp next day and went down from the O'Onagazi to Pine Ridge, and many, many Lakotas were already there. Also, there were many, many soldiers. They stood in 2 lines with their guns held in front of them as we went through to where we camped. And so it was all over. I did not know then how much was ended. When I look back now from this high hill of my old age, I can still see the butchered women and children lying heaped and scattered all along the crooked gulch as plain as when I saw them with eyes still young. And I can see that something else died there in the bloody mud, and it was buried in the blizzard. A people's dream died there. It was a beautiful dream. And I, to whom so great a vision was given in my youth, you see me now a pitiful old man who has done nothing, for the nation's hoop is broken and scattered. There is no center any longer, and the sacred tree is dead. Chapter 26, Author's Postscript. After the conclusion of the narrative, Black Elk and our party were sitting at the north edge of Cuny Table, looking off across the Badlands, the beauty and the strangeness of the earth, as the old man expressed it. Pointing at Harney Peak that loomed back above the far sky rim, Black Elk said, "There, when I was young, the spirits took me in my vision to the center of the earth and showed me all the good things in the sacred hoop of the world. I wish I could stand up there in the flesh before I die, for there is something I want to say to the 6 grandfathers." So the trip to Harney Peak was arranged, and a few days later we were there. On the way up to the summit, Black Elk remarked to his son Ben, "Something should happen today. If I have any power left, the thunder beings of the west should hear me when I send a voice, and there should be at least a little thunder and a little rain." What happened is, of course, related to Wasichu readers as being merely a more or less striking coincidence. It was a bright and cloudless day, and after we had reached the summit the sky was perfectly clear. It was a season of drought, one of the worst in the memory of the old men. The sky remained clear until about the conclusion of the ceremony. "Right over there," said Black Elk, indicating a point of rock, "is where I stood in my vision, but the hoop of the world about me was different, for what I saw was in the spirit." Having dressed and painted himself as he was in his great vision, he faced the west, holding the sacred pipe before him in his right hand. Then he sent forth a voice, and a thin, pathetic voice it seemed in that vast space around us. "Hey-ya, hey, hey-ya, hey, hey-ya, hey, hey-ya, hey, grandfather, great spirit, once more behold me on earth and lean to hear my feeble voice. You lived first, and you are older than all need, older than all prayer. All things belong to you, the 2-leggeds, the 4-leggeds, the wings of the air, and all green things that live. You have set the powers of the 4 quarters to cross each other. The good road and the road of difficulties you have made to cross, and where they cross, the place is holy. Day in and day out, forever, you are the life of things. Therefore I am sending a voice, Great Spirit, my grandfather, forgetting nothing you have made, the stars of the universe and the grasses of the earth. You have said to me, when I was still young and could hope, that in difficulty I should send a voice 4 times, once for each quarter of the earth, and you would hear me. Today I send a voice for a people in despair. You have given me a sacred pipe, and through this I should make my offering. You see it now. From the west you have given me the cup of living water and the sacred bow, the power to make live and to destroy. You have given me a sacred wind and the herb from where the white giant lives, the cleansing power and the healing. The daybreak star and the pipe you have given from the east, and from the south the nation's sacred hoop and the tree that was to bloom. To the center of the world you have taken me and showed the goodness and the beauty and the strangeness of the greening earth, the only mother, and there the spirit shapes of things, as they should be, you have shown to me, and I have seen. At the center of this sacred hoop, you have said that I should make the tree to bloom. With tears running, O Great Spirit, my grandfather, with tears running, I must say now that the tree has never bloomed. A pitiful old man, you see me here, and I have fallen away and have done nothing. Here at the center of the world, where you took me when I was young and taught me, here, old, I stand, and the tree is withered. Grandfather, my grandfather. Again, and maybe the last time on this earth, I recall the great vision you sent me. It may be that some little root of the sacred tree still lives. Nourish it then, that it may leaf and bloom and fill with singing birds. Hear me, not for myself, but for my people. I am old. Hear me, that they may once more go back into the sacred hoop and find the good red road, the shielding tree. We who listened now noted that thin clouds had gathered about us. A scant chill rain began to fall, and there was low, muttering thunder without lightning. With tears running down his cheeks, the old man raised his voice to a thin, high wail and chanted, "In sorrow I am sending a feeble voice, O 6 powers of the world. Hear me in my sorrow, for I may never call again. O make my people live." For some minutes the old man stood silent, with face uplifted, weeping in the drizzling rain. In a little while the sky was clear again. The end.